Hello BookTube, it's Roz from Scully's Anything About Books.
And Tilly from Tilly's Shelf.
And we're here to talk about nesting.
By Roisin O'Donnell. So this is another one of our contemporary reads. We'll be reading one book a month.
Yes, sort of recent fiction.
Yeah,
That's
up to date.
Yes. And it's very up to date because it was published in 2025, so it's one of this year's books.
And it was longlisted for the
Women's Prize for Fiction,
but didn't progress to
the shortlist. But it was one of the books that a lot of people said, "Oh, but I'm really disappointed that didn't make it to the shortlist."
Yes, and I can understand why. We'll talk about.
We'll talk more about that as we go along. But for a debut novel, definitely
very powerful. My goodness,
impressive, well done. Roisin O'Donnell.
Yes.
Good job. Good job.
Would read further books by her.
Would read again.
Well,
yes.
I don't know, because it was really, really intense and it made me quite anxious. For the characters, like I was saying, it's not since last year we read Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. That's the last novel that I can think of that made me really feel like the characters were that real.
There was, a sense of jeopardy.
Yes, that I had the sense of urgency in reading because I needed to know if they were going to be, all right.
Yeah, and in fact, I started reading it. It was our book for April, and I started reading it sort of early in April, and read the first sort of 25, 30 pages and thought, actually, I'm having much too anxious a week this week. I've got to put this down. I can't read this right now because had such a sort of intense feeling.
So she does a very masterful job of creating a realistic sense of suspense and threat.
Yes, it has a thriller-like quality in that sense.
Yeah,
doesn't it? Although it's not a sort of your typical thriller plot.
Yes.
But that sort of emotional impact. Intensity. Yeah.
It's a page turner somehow.
It's definitely a page turner. It's definitely a page turner.
So should we say a little bit about what nesting is about?
Yes. Do you want to explain?
I thought you might. So it's about a young woman, a mum, in her relationship at the start of her. So the book opens with them going for like a nice family day out at the beach, like first trip to the beach of the year, and it seems like it should be a nice, happy family day out, but then you increasingly realise that there is a huge level of tension within her about her partner and their relationship, and. Yeah. Yes,
and how he may react or behave, or and at that point they have two small children, and she realizes she's about to realize that she's pregnant. So
or she suspects at that point that she's pregnant, and she finds out the next day or something like that. Yeah.
So it's a story representing the experience of coercive control in relationships.
Yes.
That kind of domestic abuse, and I think
I think
becomes clear.
Yeah, coercive control and other types.
And there are other. And that it becomes clear quite quickly. And I think it's not a spoiler in that it's the thing that's sort of typically said about the book is that that's his thing.
And the other thing that's frequently said about it is that it reflects the housing crisis, in that when she's thinking of what to do about this relationship situation that she's in, what options does she have, and the options that are available in terms of publicly supported housing. It's a book about the increasing reliance on hotels as a system of accommodation for people who are homeless.
Yeah, so because it's set in 2018, so recent, and in Dublin, that my understanding is it's very accurate about that side.
And I don't think that's changed or improved in the intervening time.
And one of the things that I liked about the book was I did feel that it gave an accurate, as far as I could tell, because I've not been in a relationship like that, but I've observed some and had contact with people in those situations, that it was a realistic representation of how it feels to be in that situation.
I liked that the constant in terms of, I liked the as it felt accurate, the constant portrayal of her self-doubt and her constant checking herself and thinking, but maybe he is a good father, or maybe, you know, am I making too much out of this, you know, like
maybe I am doing something wrong,
it is my fault, you know, if I'd acted differently,
or you know, well, if I take my children out of this situation, like take them away from their father and away from their home and away from what's familiar,
is that going to be worse?
Am I? Is that being a good mother, or is it that being a bad mother? You know.
Yeah. And you know, like there's a very real debate that for her to have there, if the alternative accommodation is
a hotel.
Doesn't really there's no appropriate alternative accommodation. There might just be a little bit of noise just because we do have a small baby in the room. But he's being adequately distracted. And the other thing was the sensation that she has that she can't think, that she can't.
That sort of paralysis at times, and then when she does manage to do something, and we're trying to avoid spoilers, you know, in this, when she does manage to do that, but then having made one decision, done one brave thing, she then gets this sort of sense of inertia that, like, just deciding or organising anything else is just too difficult. And I, you know, absolutely met people in that situation where you know that then having to deal with the sort of the administration almost around leaving someone, you know, it feels impossible, or other aspects of your life that you normally be able to get on with and deal with.
Suddenly everything's just so much more complicated and so much more challenging.
But also just that you've almost used all your resilience to do one thing, and then
I was going to say something about that, but
no.
I've lost it. The idea of there being like the support that might be available or should be available. There's a couple of points in the book, and I'll start with one that's very near the beginning. That's not. She's speaking to somebody who's involved in housing support, and they ask her at that point, "Oh, you know, is it an abusive relationship? You know, do you want to leave because it's a situation of abuse?" And she responds, "You know, I don't know, it was just difficult." And that person doesn't follow up at all, and they just say, "Oh, you know, well, there wouldn't be any space in the refuges anyway," and they don't give her any extra resources. And there's a few points like that where you think she's so close to the theoretical support that's out there, but she just doesn't have that human touch of somebody reaching out and saying, "Well, actually, this is what we can do for you."
Or when you say difficult, tell me a bit more.
Yeah,
she has the same experience with her midwife, who asks the sort of the standard, "Oh, you know, are you afraid of your husband?" question, which, you know, they do. Somebody's recently been pregnant. It's a standard standard practice.
But it's also standard practice throughout healthcare. You're supposed to ask everybody, "Do you feel safe at home?" And it's a question that I know I've got a lot of colleagues who don't like asking it and would prefer to rush over it, and, you know, like, or tick unable to ask or whatever, because you know that people don't people don't know how to handle that,
and hence there are these missed opportunities.
These are where people have asked us that they can tick the box to say, "Yes, I've asked that," but they don't really try and get her to answer.
So in terms of sort of realism, that certainly the beginning part of the book really worked for me, almost too much, to the extent that I was over-identified with it emotionally. I think in terms of the latter part of the book, again, don't want to do spoilers, but it was slightly less convincing for me, but I didn't mind that, because it kind of, it's a novel, and you have to have resolution in a novel. But that sense of fear, tension, and that it could all, you know, something awful could happen at any time, was sustained all the way through.
Absolutely. And I think Roisin O'Donnell definitely wanted to write a book that had aspects of optimism in it, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I did sometimes feel that there was some of the things that were optimistic were perhaps a little bit fairy tale, like that she, you know, that she ends up meeting some people who are not professionally supportive, but you know, being able to go out and make friends and things that.
But that might happen.
It might happen. I'm not saying that any of it couldn't happen at all, but I just thought a lot of things do line up.
But you know, but I'm not. Overall, I thought the plotting was really, really strong. In literary terms,
I would say that's why it didn't make it to the shortlist of the prizes. It's a really good book, and you read it with so much passion and interest that you kind of. You're willing to, you stop noticing it. Like the first couple of pages, I think you notice the writing a little bit, but then you get swept along and you stop noticing.
Yes. You don't, it
doesn't matter.
And it's written well enough that you're not, you know, if it's something really badly written, I get sort of pulled out of the story.
You don't get swept along. You don't get the emotional
by a clumsy sentence or whatever, but you don't get that. It's all kind of competent all the way through.
It's good enough.
Yes, that sounds awful. I don't mean, but it's not like it's not a book you think, oh, I remember this book for the amazing language or the amazing sort of writing style. You remember this book for the plot and the characters.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's completely valid.
Yeah, and it's a very compassionate book.
Yeah.
It's a book with a lot of heart.
Yeah, it's written with care.
And love.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the kind of extra material at the end and stuff, it sounds like she really tried very hard to research and understand. Sorry, I just kicked the camera. Research and understand the situation that she was writing about. And
the other thing that I felt she captured really, really well was the experience of being a young mother.
Yes.
A mother with young children, and regardless of other aspects of the situation, that was, there were bits that and the children were also, really convincing.
Yeah. Well, I think she's a mum herself, so I think she was able to bring a lot of personal experience into making that.
Yeah,
believable.
There was a moment I especially loved when she had a really bad day. Something quite difficult has just happened, and her daughter, who's like 4 or 5, says to her, "Oh, mummy, what was the best thing in your day, mummy?" And it's like, that's what you say. You do that to small children when they've had a bit of a wobbly day, and you ask them, what was a good thing in your day, and her daughter was wanting to cheer her up and was sort of doing back to her, it was one of those moments where you just thought, oh yeah, spot on.
And that she captured the way that her mood as a mother is affecting, and the situation around her as a mother is affecting her children as well. But she did that in a fairly subtle way.
There was a lot of nuance in the book. So one, I'm sure that I would sort of recommend to other readers.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you, yeah. I think when I look back on 2025, it will be one of the books that is really sticks in my mind. It will stand out as one of the most. It's definitely one of the most memorable reads of my year so far. And when we're nearly halfway through the year, aren't we? And it's sort of right up there for impact, I suppose.
Yeah, definite impact. I'm like I said, I'm not surprised that it didn't get onto the shortlist. But I really got so much out of reading it, and would read something else by her again. Absolutely. I feel like I want to keep knowing what's happening to these characters, because I feel like there's a kind of a resolution, but then I want to know I want to know what happens next.
What happens next? Yes, absolutely, and that's because they felt so real. Yeah. So
is that enough?
I think that will do.
Yeah,
under 15 minutes is good, and I think our May book is going to be Whale Fall. Is that right?
Sounds great.
Because we were going with an island theme again.
Yes.
Yeah. So take care.
Thank you for watching.
See you again soon. Bye.